I think many of you know that the lectionary is very well organized, that the gospel, we've been reading from the same gospel all the year 2023, the Gospel of Matthew. And it's from one chapter to the next, chapter this, chapter that, in consecutive order. Whatever the theme of the gospel is, the lectionary authors look for something in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures, that match that gospel. So reading number 1 and gospel, reading number 3, are always the same theme. So the readings this week, which I'll talk about in a minute, are about giving correction to those we love, correction to others in our lives, family, friends, relatives, and so on. The second reading, in between the first two, always has its separate theme. It's also continuous. We've been reading from the letter of Paul to the Romans for a long time. It goes chapter by chapter. So they're seldom in sync with each other because they weren't meant to be. But today, all three really do work together. The first three talk about how important it is to correct and discipline others. And Paul's letter says, and everything we do has to be done lovingly. So let's talk about correction, discipline. Something very difficult to do and something very difficult to receive. But first of all, the easiest part of discipline are those who are in charge of younger people. Parents, grandparents, coaches, teachers, etc. Young people need to be disciplined. Very, very important. And sometimes it may be difficult for those getting disciplined. I know when I was a child, I thought my parents were pretty strict. And once I asked them, why are you doing this? Why are you so strict and so mean? My mother said, because we love you. I said, okay, stop loving me. That was not the right answer. I never said that again. But as I grew older, I realized they were perfectly right. I needed discipline. I needed some correction so I could turn out to be somewhat of a decent adult. And that's important for all of you as well. Again, if you are working with young children, forming them in the faith or in coaching or school, whatever, discipline. Of course, I'm not talking about abuse or anything like that. You know, there was a fad in the 1970s by a Dr. Benjamin Spock of parenting, and I guess there were some good points, but a lot of times it was carried to extreme. One time when I was at another parish before here, and actually before Christ the King, so many, many years ago, I was invited to a couple's house for dinner. And they had told me that they had a little son, I think he was about 6 years old, and this little boy would never hear the word no. That no was a negative word, and they wanted nothing negative ever to be part of his life. So he'd never be told no. I thought, this is going to be trouble. So I went to the house for dinner. I remember we had spaghetti, and so the boy had a plate of spaghetti they gave him, and it was real plates, not plastic or paper, real plates, like ceramic or glass or whatever. And apparently he didn't like the spaghetti. So he took up the plate, and he threw it on the floor, and the floor was stained concrete. And the plate smashed into smithereens. And his mom goes over to him and says, now, son, are we having a bad day? I'll show that kid a bad day. So again, that's very important. And very important how parents and children, are in sync with each other. Another more difficult type of discipline and correction is something we give to a peer, our spouse, our best friends, our brothers or sisters. Because sometimes their attitude might be, mind your own business. You take care of your life, I'll take care of mine. But how important it is. When I work with engaged couples, I say, if you have a problem between the two of you, try to keep it between the two of you all the time. It's no one else's business what your problems are. I remember when my parents were talking to my sister Sharon, and at that time her fiancé Johnny, and giving them advice about marriage. And I don't know if they wanted me to sit in on it or not, but I remember the conversation very much. Mom and Dad said to Sharon, we love our future son-in-law Johnny, and you're going to have a good marriage. We know that. But you two are going to have fights now and then. We don't want to hear about them at all. Don't tell us about them. Because you two are going to kiss and make up, everything's going to be fine. But Sharon, when you came to us and told us some of the things that Johnny did or said, we're going to have this horrible picture of him because you exaggerated it, you were angry. We don't want to hear that. I think good advice. As I tell engaged couples, if you need someone outside, to help you in a problem, make sure that person is objective. It's not tug of war. How many people can get on my side to prove my spouse wrong? That just makes the problem worse. You need someone honest enough to say, you're wrong. I give this example. Say, Mary, your best friend is Susie, and you go to Susie with a problem between you and your husband, Joe, and Mary's first line is, all men are jerks, and Joe is a prime example. She's a lousy marriage counselor. Don't go to her. Or if Joe goes to his best friend, John, and John says, it was you and me, buddy, before, Mary came into your life and ruined our friendship, then he's not very objective either. So find someone who's objective, how important that is. And then the gospel today gives us a whole plan how practical Jesus was. He says, if you have a problem with someone, try to settle it, just the two of you. It's no one else's business. Just try to settle it with the two of you. That's good in a family, it's good in a business, it's good in a company, whatever. You don't correct someone in front of everybody else to embarrass them, to hurt them, to make them look bad. Try to just between the two of you. And if you can't do that between the two of you, then bring along a couple other good friends. There's a very technical program called intervention. Intervention is where family and friends literally surround someone, usually because they're having very dangerous addictive behavior. And they say to that person, we've got plans for you for the next week, 2 weeks, months, whatever. You're going to rehab. You're going to kick this alcohol, addiction. And I've seen interventions like that end up very happily, miraculous. And I've seen others that have backfired. Again, get out of my face, whatever. So these are difficult things to do. But remember, the most important thing is that they're done with love. That's what Jesus says, they're done with love. Now, as a priest, I have many opportunities to discipline people, and I try to do my best, and I know Father Jojo does. One example is in the confessional. When we hear your confessions, hopefully we are always nice, we are always kind, we're always helpful, we're always encouraging. I've heard horror stories, never here, and I'm not sure if even I can name a parish, but I've heard horror stories from the past where someone says, I went to confession, and the priest yelled at me, and everyone outside heard him yelling. And, one of the reasons people leave the Catholic Church is because the priest treated them badly. I'm not talking about abuse. I'm just talking about they were mean to them. Confession is not meant to be punishment or execution. Confession is a ministry. And same thing when couples come to me for getting married. We give them a compatibility test. It's not a pass-fail test. It's a compatibility profile. And they have to react to statements. One of the statements that they react to is, I believe if someone is going to get married in the Catholic Church, they should be active in the Catholic Church. And the preferred response is say yes to that. I say, I don't say yes to that. I don't care if you're active in the Catholic Church or not. I don't care what your past is. I don't care if you haven't been to Mass for years. I don't care what your living situation is. Your past is your past. But if you're coming to me to have this relationship become a sacrament, I want you to have the best, most positive experience you can possibly have. Maybe you'll come back to church because I treated you nice. But if I threw the book at you and called you names and said, you haven't been in church for years, what are you doing here? Why would you ever come back to a place or a person that treated you like that? So again, that's what Jesus is saying. Yes, correct one another. Sometimes it can be tough love, but always done out of love. Always done because you love that person. And because you love that person, you say, I'm going to try to help you get out of this problem. I'm going to help you get away from this addiction. Love conquers all things. And the flip side of that is, can you take correction from others? Are you the recipient of someone's correction? And again, we don't like that. We like to say, yeah, get out of my face. But if you realize the person really loves you, can you be humble enough to listen? Say, thank you. I know I've been doing this wrong. I know I haven't done things right, and thank you for pointing out to me. I know someone like you had to tell me what my problems are. I know them, but I need someone from the outside to kind of look in. So that's the hard, beautiful teaching of today's readings. If we love someone enough, we will help them get out of trouble that they got themselves in, whatever it might be. And if we can be humble enough that those who love us lovingly correct us. And the result is that person will live a happier life, and so will I, the recipient. Love conquers all things. Lovingly correct, challenge, critique, discipline others, but make sure it's done out of love. and you will have done a great thing and made their life and this world a better place.